Welcome to the Compassion and Choices Oregon annual fundraising luncheon. We have a very big program today, so I'd like to ask you to sit down and start to eat your lunch, and we are about to begin.
The thoughts that go through your mind when you find out you have so little time is everything that you need to say to everyone that you love. So after getting married is when I first started experiencing the headaches, and they were quite severe. And I didn't understand them because I had never had anything like that before in my life. Right when I was diagnosed, my husband and I were actively trying for a family, which is heartbreaking for us both. And then I was diagnosed this past New Year's. We went away to the wine country for kind of a New Year's Eve celebration, and by Jan 1, the following day, I was diagnosed with cancer and told I was terminally ill. I was told I had a grade 2 astrocytoma, and was told anywhere from 3, maybe 5, up to 10 years to live. I have to tell you, when you're 29 years old, being told you have that kind of timeline still feels like you're being told you're gonna die tomorrow. 70 days post-op, I went in for another MRI and was told I had had a grade change. They were looking and saying it looks like grade 4, which is the worst and most aggressive form of brain cancer. It's called a glioblastoma. So that was a major shock to my system and the system of my family, because it went from having potentially years of time to being told I had like 6 months. My parents spent a couple months, they just wanted to search for a miracle.
In the beginning, I hoped for everything. First I hoped that they had just the wrong x-rays, the wrong set of scans. It was all just a big clerical mishap. Your brain will do really strange things to you when you don't want to believe something. You will come up with fairy tales.
I don't wake up every day and look at it. It's in a safe spot, and I know that it's there when I need it. I plan to be surrounded by my immediate family, which is my husband and my mother and my stepfather and my best friend, who's also a physician, and probably not much more people. And I will die upstairs in my bedroom that I share with my husband, with my mother and my husband by my side, and pass peacefully with some music that I like in the background.
Between suffering or being allowed to decide when enough is enough, it just, to me, makes provides a lot of relief and comfort that, okay, that option is there if and when we decide, or she decides that it's time.
I can't even tell you the amount of relief that it provides me to know that I don't have to die the way that it's been described to me that my brain tumor would take me on its own.
Death with dignity allows for people who are in the predicament of facing a lot of suffering, that they can decide when enough is enough.
Brittany's always been kind of bigger than life. She's kind of a wanderlust, and she's always liked exciting things, adrenaline rush. She's liked traveling. She's always been precocious and very, very bright. And anything she set her mind to, she did.
Since becoming ill, I have traveled and continued. My husband and I took a beautiful trip to Yellowstone. It was exquisite. And then I went with my best friend to Alaska, and we went to Denali National Park, and we went to Seaward and Kenai Fjords, and kayaked up to the glaciers. And then I met my mother in Juneau, and we took this spectacular boat trip. Before I pass, I'm hoping to make it to the Grand Canyon, place I've never been. And that's all I can do is set little goals like that, and all those things make every day worthwhile.
My hope now is that my daughter can live her life the way she wants to, that she can make the decisions that she wants to, that she can be who she is, which is this very autonomous, bright, well-read, well-traveled person who loves adventure. She's kind of got me into this thing where now we've agreed to meet. And so I'm going to go on a traveling adventure. And it's a place I'm kind of scared to go to, Machu Picchu. A lot of climbing, but she said she'd meet me there. And so damn it, I'll go.
I hope to enjoy however many days I have left on this beautiful earth and spend as much of it outside as I can, surrounded by those I love. I hope to pass in peace. The reason to consider life and what's of value is to make sure you're not missing out. Seize the day. What's important to you? What do you care about? What matters? Pursue that. Forget the rest.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Diaz, and I'm the National Director of Legal Affairs. What a video. Every so often we come across people in our lives that remind us on a fundamental level why the work of compassion and choices is so important. I watched the video a bunch of times this morning to try to desensitize myself, and it didn't work. I'm sorry about that. My meeting with Brittany and her husband this summer was one of those moments. It immediately became clear to me that Brittany was someone who was both wise beyond her years and fully engaged in life. Her willingness to share her story to expand choice at the end of life is truly inspiring, and we're just so pleased that her message has reached so many people. This morning, when I last checked, the video that you just saw was on YouTube and had over 2.4 million views. That's since being released on Monday. I want to thank you for joining us today. Unfortunately, Barbara Coombs-Lee couldn't be with us. She's currently in Connecticut delivering another keynote address. However, we trust that despite her absence, you will still leave this luncheon energized and inspired. As you know, the mission of Compassion and Choices is to improve care and expand end-of-life choice. We offer information and support to patients and their families, provide expertise to the medical community, and work across the nation to protect and expand every individual's autonomy. Nationally, we've never been busier. Compassion and Choices is now active in 16 states, working both to enact aid in dying laws in states like California, Connecticut, and New Jersey, and to normalize and integrate aid in dying into the standard of medical practice for states that already have a law like Oregon's. We are engaged in 2 national campaigns to change the culture of patient decision-making, thereby empowering patients to make medical care choices that better reflect what they themselves want. The response to our efforts has been impressive. We've seen healthcare consumers in every state demand better care and more choice, and a growing number of luminaries such as former Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Stephen Hawking, Sir Richard Branson, and Dear Abby have all spoken out in favor of death with dignity laws. More and more, we're also hearing from otherwise seemingly ordinary people who, because of circumstances beyond their control, becoming extraordinary leaders in our movement. We're thrilled that one of those leaders, Barbara Mancini, is here with us today to share her harrowing tale of what she and her family had to endure in Pennsylvania. And we are so grateful for the tremendous work that she has done on behalf of patients. Because of people like Brittany Maynard and Barbara Mancini, Our movement is experiencing phenomenal growth and support across the country. But let's never forget that it all started right here in Oregon. As Oregonians, all of us should take great pride in the fact that we are the innovators that the rest of the country continues to look to, both for inspiration and guidance on this important human right. I'd now like to introduce Kat West, Oregon State Director for Compassion and Choices. Kat is an attorney with extensive policy and program experience and a deep commitment to end-of-life advocacy. She's a great leader, and she's a joy to work with. Kat?
Well, hello, everyone. Kevin can say I'm a joy to work with. He's only been with the organization for 3 months. Give me time, give me time. Well, I just wanted to say welcome to everyone. It is wonderful to see everyone here. So many friendly and familiar faces, and actually quite a few new ones. So welcome. And I want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you for making the Oregon experience so successful. And thank you for being here in support of people like Brittany, who at the end of their life want to die on their own terms. They want to die in peace, with comfort, with dignity, and with their loved ones surrounding them at their bedside. Oregon is a leader in the national end-of-life movement. And that's because of your compassion and your commitment to these issues. And I'd like to recognize the exceptional service of some of the people in the room today. And I know that you're enjoying a delicious lunch right now, so you're gonna have to forgive me. But if I can have the following people stand. If you are a lunch sponsor, will you please stand? If you are on the event committee, will you please stand? If you're one of our fabulous table captains, will you please stand? If you're on the advisory board, if you're one of our leadership council members, and if you're one of our outreach volunteers or one of our client support volunteers, will you please stand to be recognized right now? Thank you. We could not do this work without the people that just stood. So I'm going to put some other people on the spot right now. Healthcare providers, my personal heroes. If you are a healthcare provider, a doctor, a nurse, a social worker, if you are work with hospice, can you please stand and take our thanks right now? As I said, my personal heroes. We also have some special guests with us here today, and I would like to recognize former Governor Barbara Roberts. Can you please stand? We'd like to. Hi, Barbara. We also have former Governor Ted Kulongowski. I see. Hi, Ted. State Representative Lou Fredericks has joined us. Hi, Lou. And school board member Bobby Reagan is here. Bobby. And State Senator Betsy Johnson was supposed to join us, but I think she sent her regrets, so I do not see her here. But she is a big supporter and is usually here every year. She sends her regrets. One last group I'm going to pick on, and that is our new supporters. And we want to really welcome you. So if this is your first time at a luncheon, can you please stand and accept our welcome? Welcome. All right, so now you can go back to enjoying your delicious lunch. All right. So, annual update. I'm going to be fast and furious here because I only have a couple minutes, but I want to tell you about all the fabulous things that have been happening in the past 12 months. So we have been experiencing tremendous, and I mean tremendous energy and momentum. And I'm just going to list a couple of the highlights, some accomplishments for you. First, we did the hard work. We fully integrated with Compassion and Choices. We also developed and adopted our first strategic plan for Oregon, so we have a roadmap for the next 5 years. We recruited new advisory board members. We formed an 8-person leadership council. We recruited just a wonderful new Oregon medical director, Dr. Grube. Where are you, Dr. Grube? Thank you. Who covers the Corvallis area. And we also hired 2 new staff in very critical positions. First is Wendy Hale. Wendy, where are you? Hi, Wendy. Wendy is our new Oregon Care Manager. And then Matt Whitaker. Matt, where are you? Hi, Matt. Way back in the corner. Matt is our new Oregon Outreach Coordinator. And if you haven't met these 2 people yet, do yourself a favor, go meet them. They have such energy, enthusiasm for our mission, and we are so happy that they are here and have joined us. But most importantly, Compassion and Choices Oregon provided consultation support to 422 people and their families in the past 12 months. That's about 100 more than we did the year before. Okay, and one last time I'm going to pick on people. If you were part of the support, either staff or volunteer, who helped these 422 people and their families, will you stand to be recognized? This is sacred work, and these people are angels, so thank you so much. So if that's not enough, it gets better. So Compassion and Choices Oregon is now ready to take the end-of-life movement to the next level. And the goals that we're organizing around right now are nothing less than transformational. I am proud to announce the launch of the Oregon Access Campaign. And I remember I was here a year ago and I talked about this campaign. We didn't really know what it was going to look like. We didn't really know how it was going to take shape. Let me tell you, we are on fire now. And I want to thank Advisory Board member Lynn Loacker and the other advisory board members who provided financial support to get this campaign kicked off. So let me tell you a little bit about it. The goal of the campaign is to normalize and integrate end-of-life choice into the standard of medical care in Oregon. And let me just say that again. So the goal of the campaign is to normalize and integrate end-of-life choice into the standard of medical care in Oregon. This is going to be big. We want to empower this relationship. Oops, can you go back for a sec? We're going to empower this relationship right here because that is the heart of healthcare, the relationship between a doctor and a patient. And we want to empower and educate both sides of that relationship so the doctors and the healthcare providers are proactively telling their patients about end-of-life choice, and the patients, the people, the families are proactively asking. That's not happening right now. And with the Oregon Access Campaign, we are going to turn that around. So we have 2 main strategies. And the 2 main strategies for the Oregon Access Campaign are first, a comprehensive end-of-life education and support program for doctors and for healthcare providers. And we're already starting some of this. We're about to go into full gear with a national doctor-to-doctor support program. So any doctor, any healthcare provider can call our medical directors and ask questions and really have their hands held through anything that they're not comfortable with. We're also going to be integrating end-of-life care and choice into medical school and nursing school curricula. This is a big deal. because if we can get the baby docs now, in 5 years, it's going to be a whole different landscape. So we're very excited about that. And we're also creating a robust continuing medical education program for healthcare providers. So they can actually get credit for coming and hearing about end-of-life choice. So the other strategy we have is that we are building a vast network of advocates around the state, and we are launching outreach teams around the state as well. And this has got a lot of momentum, so I'm going to show you a slide here. We now have 5 outreach teams across the state: Portland, Corvallis, Eugene, Bend, and Medford. 3 months ago, we only had 2. So in the last 3 months, we've launched 3 more outreach teams, and they are very excited to be ambassadors for us out in the communities. They are already doing fabulous work. This slide is, it shows 14 events that we did in 1 year, 14 fabulous, well-attended events between July of 2013 and July of 2014. This shows 17 more events we've just done in the past 3 months. Our outreach teams are on fire. Our medical directors are getting into hospitals, are getting into hospice. We are spreading the word. We are really going to transform end-of-life care and choice in Oregon. So you can help us as well. Not only are you here today in support of our mission, but you can like us on Facebook. You can help spread the word through social media about what we're doing. So please go and like us there. And also, you can connect us with your networks, your organizations. We would love to come and do a presentation to anyone in your network that is interested. They're fun. We'll bring chocolate. It'll be good. So invite us to your networks and your organizations, and we will absolutely be there and help people understand what their choices are. We do everything from advanced planning presentations to presentations about death with dignity and other end-of-life care. So, in closing, I would like to give a shout out. We have really catapulted into the next century with this luncheon because we are live streaming this luncheon right now. And I'd like to give a shout out to our outreach teams in Bend and Medford who are having house parties right now and watching this event. So hi Bend, hi Medford. And another shout out to Partners in Care Hospice in Bend who are live streaming this for their staff right now. So thank you to Partners in Care. Woo-hoo! So each of us has the potential to affect great change in the world. And I see that spark burning brightly in everyone here. So thank you for supporting Compassion and Choices Oregon's mission, the sacred work that is accomplished in this mission, and for the impact that you have on real people and real families in Oregon during their time of greatest need. Thank you. And so it is with great pleasure that I get to introduce our keynote speaker right now. And I'm just going to tell her that it's always sunny in Oregon, never rains in October. You should come back often. So just ahead of time. So Barbara Mancini is a nurse, a mother of 2, and now a committed Death with Dignity activist. Barbara's story is almost unbelievable. Barbara was unjustly arrested and prosecuted for assisted suicide for handing her 93-year-old father, terminally ill father, his prescribed morphine just 4 days before his death. Barbara's prosecution lasted a year, during which time it garnered national attention and was roundly criticized throughout the media. Barbara is here to share her story with us today, and she's also available for any questions that you might have after our program. Please join me in welcoming Barbara Mancini to Oregon.
Good afternoon. James Baldwin famously said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." I'm happy to be here in Oregon, the state that had the courage and vision to enact the nation's first death with dignity law. You're very lucky to have this law for 17 years now and to have it protected by compassion and choices. I know just how lucky you are because of what happened to me and my father. I stand here today as an example of what can happen when laws are taken to extremes. I was never an activist before. My experience has transformed me into an activist for laws modeled after Oregon's visionary Death with Dignity law. In February 2013, I was arrested and prosecuted on the charge of aiding the attempted suicide of my terminally ill 93-year-old father. Instead of the peaceful and dignified death at home that he hoped for, he died after prolonged suffering and being subjected to exactly the medical treatment that he specified in his written advance directives that he never wanted. The circumstances and the politics that allowed this to happen could certainly happen again. My story is a cautionary tale. This is my dad, Joe Yorshaw. He was one of 12 children born to a first-generation immigrant family. He was a decorated World War II veteran, and after the war, he worked hard to establish his own business. He was a contractor and he did heavy excavation work. He married my mother, and together they raised 4 children. My dad could build anything and fix anything. Mom says that she never had to call a repairman for anything until the last year of my father's life. He was independent, strong-willed, and had focused convictions on how he wanted to live. He had a number of medical conditions: high blood pressure, diabetes, heart and kidney disease, stroke, arthritis. And at the age of 92, he made the decision to stop taking the medicines that treated these conditions. Why? They weren't improving the quality of his life, which was getting worse over time. He discussed his feelings with my family and with his doctor, and we all agreed to respect his wishes. In February 2013, I was a regular person. I've been married for 20 years. We have 2 teenage daughters. We have a dog and 2 cats. I work as an ER nurse. My husband and I do volunteer work in our community. My parents lived in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, a 2-hour drive from my home in Philadelphia. I would speak with my parents on the phone several times a day, and as Dad's health worsened, I visited frequently. So I was a very busy person, but I had a private life. If you search me now, you will get millions of search results. At 93, my dad was terminally ill. He enrolled in home hospice care, and he was having significant pain. As a nurse, I know that pain and other distressing symptoms often worsen as a person nears death. My father asked me to hand him his pain medicine, a partly filled 1-ounce bottle of liquid morphine. When I passed the bottle to him, He removed the cap and he quickly drank what was left. Was it to relieve his severe pain or to end it all? Only he knew that answer. A hospice nurse arrived a short time later, and I explained that Dad had drunk his morphine. He was drowsy, but he was not unconscious. The hospice nurse and her supervisor insisted that my father be taken to the emergency room for treatment of an overdose. My father's advance directive specified he wanted no life-prolonging treatment. I was his legal health care proxy. He had a standing do not resuscitate order. He was adamant that he never wanted to go to a hospital. I tried in vain to assure that his wishes were respected. But the hospice called 911. Paramedics and police arrived, and against my father's express wishes, he was taken to the hospital for treatment, and I was arrested on the spot in the house. I was charged with aiding an attempted suicide. It's a second-degree felony in Pennsylvania, and conviction carries up to 10 years in prison. The police captain who arrested me told me I no longer had any say in what happened to my father. In my presence, he spoke on the phone with the ER doctor, and he told the doctor if my father died, things would go much worse for me. That information was relayed to my 84-year-old mother, who was put in the position of having to choose between honoring her promise to my father or helping me. So my mother gave consent for the hospital to treat my father. 2 hours after arriving in the ER, my father was given a medicine to reverse the effects of the morphine. He was furious that he'd been brought to the hospital, and he knew I was in trouble. He shouted and pleaded repeatedly, "Don't hurt Barbara. Don't let them hurt Barbara." My dad suffered tremendously from that treatment in the hospital and from the anguish of knowing that I was being accused of helping him end his life. He died 4 days later from pneumonia, not from a morphine overdose. The Pennsylvania Attorney General began a year-long, zealous prosecution of me. I was put on unpaid leave from my job. The prosecutor had the court put a gag order on me, and I incurred over $100,000 in legal fees. The emotional and financial burden on my family and me was enormous. My case received widespread media coverage, locally, nationally, even internationally, due in large part to the efforts of Compassion and Choices. And the media reaction was always the same: almost universal shock and outrage, with many writers urging the Attorney General to exercise prosecutorial discretion and drop the charge. Not one opinion writer supported the decision to prosecute. It generated a lot of sympathy for my father and me, but it also raised legitimate worries among the dying and their caregivers, who are now asking, can this happen to us too? Exactly 1 year after my father's death, a judge ruled the case had no merit. The charge was dismissed. Without any apology or recognition of the ordeal that we've been put through, we were left to pick up the pieces of our lives. So this is the question that everybody has. How could this happen? There are 4 elements that I believe came together to create this terrible ordeal. 1, failure of Hospice of Central Pennsylvania. My father was in home hospice care for 2 weeks with no medicine for pain. I called the hospice and I asked them to prescribe morphine for my father, which is reasonable and appropriate because morphine is the most prescribed medication for end-of-life pain. In fact, this same hospice had provided my father with morphine in a prior enrollment 6 months earlier. Well, that phone call was later used as evidence against me. The prosecutors stated it showed that I was intending to help my father end his life. I didn't know at the time that I made that call that morphine had been prescribed for my father 2 weeks earlier, and it was withheld by the hospice. They later stated that they did that because my father said he didn't want to take any medicine. Now, I will agree, he didn't want any medicine that was going to make his life longer. But he was taking lots of Tylenol and Motrin to treat his end-of-life pain. This phrase appeared frequently in the hospice documentation about my father. Comfortable despite pain. My family and I vigorously dispute that characterization of how my father felt. In the courtroom, my attorney asked the hospice supervisor if my father had the right to have as much medicine as he needed to relieve his pain. Her answer, that is not a stated right. The same supervisor also testified that my father should not receive any more than a very low dose of morphine at any given time. This attitude guaranteed that my father would suffer until the very end. And it also contradicts what the United States Supreme Court ruled in 2 landmark cases in 1997. The majority opinion in both of these cases said that terminally ill patients have the right to as much medicine as they need to relieve their pain, even if it advances the time of death. Incredible as this seems, either the hospice supervisor didn't know this, or she knew it and disagreed with the ruling. The second element, the law. The Pennsylvania statute that criminalizes aiding suicide is vaguely written, as it is in many other states. The problem with a vague law is that it's then left open to interpretation. The Pennsylvania Attorney General interpreted this law to mean that providing legally prescribed medicine to a dying man rose to the felony level of aiding a suicide. Clarence Darrow, who was before his time, and certainly before ours, said it best. I know that every step in the progress of humanity has been met and opposed by prosecutors. The third element, criminal justice in the United States. Once an arrest has been made, the goal is conviction. In my case, there was almost no investigation done regarding this supposed crime. The prosecutors relied on untrue statements by the hospice workers and the police. They possessed records that discredited what these witnesses said and barely looked at them. For example, hospice personnel testified that my father had never been on a narcotic before. It was this same hospice that provided him with morphine on a prior enrollment. When confronted in court with evidence that my father had actually been prescribed a much higher dose of morphine prior to my ever making a phone call, The prosecutor told the judge he was unaware of that information. And if true, it was completely inconsistent with the testimony of his witnesses. Yeah, it contradicted what his witnesses said. It was right in the hospice record, and nobody bothered to read it. Did this end my prosecution? It continued for another 4 months until a judge threw out the charge in a scathing 46-page ruling. The fourth element, politics. Who wanted this case prosecuted? The police, the Attorney General, and the Schuylkill County Coroner, David Moylan. Coroner Moylan made the determination that my father died from a morphine overdose, and he ruled that the manner of death was homicide. Now, I knew that my father died of pneumonia. I later had 2 independent experts evaluate his records for an objective opinion. They both agreed he did not die of a morphine overdose. To quote, "This was not a lethal level of morphine by any means." A few weeks after releasing my father's death certificate, Coroner Moylan announced that he was running for United States Congress on a sanctity of life platform. The coroner's openly pro-life. He's a devout Catholic. And he has said this publicly. "I am a pro-life coroner." It's very important that every decision you make as coroner to determine the cause and manner of death, how does it affect the sanctity of life? I've been doing that for the last 1.5 years. Here's what's not funny. Coroner Moylan won that seat in the won the Republican primary for that seat in U.S. Congress. He will be competing in the general election next month. So to recap, these 4 things: failure of hospice of central Pennsylvania, a vague law, criminal justice in the United States, and politics all came together to create this horrible ordeal for my father and me. Does anyone here think this could happen again? Well, here's what the Attorney General of Pennsylvania had to say after the judge dismissed my case. If the citizens of the Commonwealth disagree with an existing statute, it's incumbent upon the people to work with the General Assembly to amend the law. Until such amendment occurs, it's the legal responsibility of prosecutors to enforce the law as it currently exists. Now you know why I'm an activist. Oregon's death with dignity law is groundbreaking, but for most of the people in the United States, there is no end-of-life choice. My case illustrates the extreme other side of what can happen. So there are 3 points I'd like you to remember from this talk today. First, good hospice care is essential, and not all hospices provide good care. I'm told by Compassion and Choices that you're very lucky in Oregon because most hospices here provide very good end-of-life care and choice. Second, this could happen again. And third, the laws across the nation need to be changed. We need death with dignity in all states. I applaud and heartily support the Oregon Access Campaign, which will make end-of-life choice and aid in dying a standard part of good medical care. Other states are going to look at Oregon as a leader in this progressive effort. As for my father, he died a terrible death, needlessly and tragically, and that will always haunt me. I'm speaking out to somehow make this right for him. I am an activist, so no other person will ever have to experience the trauma that came to be known as the Barbara Mancini case. And I want to add, as difficult as this experience was, there was a huge positive. The tremendous outpouring of support that I received from so many people, and the involvement of Compassion and Choices, whose support helped make me survive this year of absolute misery and hell. To all of you here today, and to everyone at Compassion and Choices, I want to say a deep, heartfelt thank you for standing by me. So, celebrate what you have here in Oregon, protect it, and expand access to it. And remember the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King: an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It was an honor and privilege to speak to you here today. Thank you.
Little difficult to follow that act. Thank you very much, Barbara, for sharing with Oregon a nightmare that may turn into a dream for the rest of the country. Good afternoon. I am Governor Barbara Roberts, and I have been honored for the past 14 years to serve as a member of Oregon's Compassion and Choices Advisory Board. I was Oregon governor in 1994 when the Death with Dignity initiative reached the ballot, and I publicly endorsed the measure that long ago, 20 years. My support has remained strong. Today, I have been given the honor of recognizing Compassion and Choices Oregon's Volunteer of the Year. Our volunteers are the backbone of Compassion and Choices, and I personally want to thank all of the volunteers for the work you do. You are essential to our mission. Thank you. Compassion and Choices Oregon's Volunteer of the Year Award is given annually to a volunteer who has provided exceptional commitment and service in fulfillment of our mission. So it is with distinct pleasure that I am able to announce that this year's award will be presented to Renee Holzman of the Holzman Foundation. Over the past several years, Renee has presided as the chair of Compassion and Choices Oregon's Advisory Board. She has also served on the newly formed Leadership Council, providing invaluable advice on strategic planning and contracts, consultants, and fundraising. Renee has been tireless in her efforts to connect Compassion and Choices to ardent and influential supporters in our community. Renee is a true activist to this cause. No matter where she is or what she is doing, Renee is always finding ways to engage her friends, her family, and her professional network with our mission. Renee is also a lovely and gracious and caring person who has been our active volunteer for over 14 years. So just before Renee joins me at the podium, I want to share a blessing that Barbara Coombs Lee has sent to Renee. You see the needs and wants of others and seek to fill them. That is your habit. You have not neglected or deferred opportunities to bestow kindness on your fellow creatures or cherished causes. That is your gift. Now may you feel the sure, warm flow of gratitude and affection that springs from our hearts when we think of you. Now may the wonder of your life, grounded in service and love, return to encircle and embrace you as you have embraced others. Please join me in recognizing the exceptional service of Renee Holzman, Volunteer of the Year for Compassion and Choices Oregon. Renee, please join me and accept our gratitude and love. Be careful. Thank you, Renee, for all you do, for all you give, and for all you caring that is part of who you are and the work you do. Now, let me introduce to you Pam Wald from Corvallis. Pam's husband, Ben chose the option of using Oregon's Death with Dignity law for a peaceful, family-centered death in 2012. Pam now volunteers with Compassion and Choices Oregon and serves as the Corvallis Outreach Volunteer Team Leader. Please welcome to the podium Pam Wald.
Before I begin, I want to let all of you know how grateful I feel standing up here and looking out at this room filled with so many wonderful, caring people. I want to let you know personally, it warms my heart deeply. To begin my story, I'd like to introduce you, first of all, to my husband, Ben, my soulmate for 43 years, who continues in that role. Ben was born in Worcester, Massachusetts, and for 60 years was a die-hard Red Sox fan. Now I'm asking if there's anybody in this room that is a Red Sox fan, will you please raise your hand? Oh, wonderful. Well, those people who raised their hands know exactly what I'm talking about when you're a die-hard Red Sox fan. My husband, Ben, went to UCLA and continued his caring for sports, but transferred it to basketball with Coach John Wooden's famous basketball teams. John Wooden saw himself as a teacher first, and Ben just loved the things he learned and listened when he listened to John Wooden. One of them was practice, 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 the fundamentals. And then on game day, you're ready to take the ball. After college, Ben decided to become a counselor to work with children and adults and kids, and he tried his best to help them develop their own fundamental skills so they could help themselves navigate through life's challenges. My husband, Ben and I have one daughter Bonnie, who was born with the, can you hear me if I stand up? Okay. Who was born with the Crete-Shaw syndrome, which resulted in mental retardation. As she was growing up, Ben loved to take Bonnie out to the garden, feed her cherry tomatoes, peas, and grew a pumpkin for her every year. As she was beginning to develop her speech, Ben felt it would be important to try to help her out by teaching her to ask simple questions. He also wanted her to grow up with a great sense of humor. And to do that as a dad, he felt it was his important role to introduce her to all the famous Jewish comedians. And he did. And I'm very proud to say that at 40 years of age, Bonnie has an incredibly great sense of humor, loves vegetables, loves to ask questions, and Halloween is her very favorite day of the year. In 2005, Ben was diagnosed with colon cancer. We thought we'd gotten it all with surgery, but by 2011 it had returned and had metastasized into his lungs and was now stage 4. We've pursued all the therapies that we could think of. We prayed, we meditated, we tried diets, we tried everything. But by 2012, March, the cancer was taking its toll. Ben was a robust 170 pounds man. And one day he said to me, woke up in the middle of the night and he said, "Pam, we've got to talk. I look in the mirror every day and I see someone from Auschwitz." He was now down to about 118 pounds. He had trouble speaking and could only whisper. His energy was low. He was in a lot of pain. And he said to me, "Pam, we need to talk. I love you. I love Bonnie. I love our friends. I've had a good life, but I don't want to continue living this way. I want your help looking into Oregon's death with dignity law." I listened, but I didn't want to listen. I hoped the next morning Ben would wake up, less pain, and he would be hungry. My vision up to this point, and I'd never thought about it, but my vision was that Ben and I, he's 9 years older than I, we would be in our 90s on walkers, head out for an outing one day, come home, and just drop dead together. That was it. That was it. But obviously, that wasn't going to happen. So the next night, he asked me he said, "We need to talk again." And I knew I was married to a very honest and open man, and I knew I had to listen, and I did listen. We talked, and I made that first call to Compassion and Choices. It was the most difficult call I'd ever made in my life, and also the most rewarding call. A couple of days later, two wonderful, and Dr. Grube refers to them as his guardian angels, Jane and Ani, came out to our house, and they helped us with answering questions and helping us with the process. They told us our job, or my job, was just to take care of Ben. They were there to help me, but I would not be standing up here talking with you and healing like I am without the help of two very important people. And I'd like Dr. David Grube to please stand up. And I'd like Dr. Nancy Packer to please stand up. This is for the rest of my life, you two are hooked to my hip. You will always be in my thoughts because I needed you and you were there for me. Ben was able to get the prescription on May 2nd, and he chose to die 2 days later on May 4th. We invited close friends and family. Ben was able to talk to each one individually. We sang songs, read poetry, listened to some music, and I could not have got the prescription ready for my husband, so I asked Jane, the Compassion Choices volunteer, if she would do that. She did that. She handed it to me, and I handed it to Ben, and he was laying on the side of the bed. He took it without any hesitation, laid back down. I held his hands, and his last words were, "Thank you." I knew in my heart, as painful as this was, that I had given my husband my last gift of love. It's been 2.5 years, and I realize now that Ben gave me, too, his last gift of love. He listened to his heart, knew this was what he wanted, and once he got permission to take this medication, my husband, even though he was 118 pounds, was that 170-pound diehard Red Sox fan had returned. And I had that because he'd been able to have his choice. He was very peaceful with this decision. I'm now learning to listen to my own heart as I make my choices now, whether or not they're small or big choices. After retirement, Ben wanted to do something to help children and adults learn things so they wouldn't have to come to him as a therapist and have such painful struggles to deal with. For him, unconditional love and listening were essential in developing nurturing relationships in families and children. As adults, we all have a child within each one of us that needs to be loved and needs to be listened to. As adults, if we're forced to make decisions that we don't feel are our own personal choices and we're not listened to, it's hard on us personally and it's hard on the relationships with one another. It's not easy when it comes to an end-of-life issue like death or dying, but it's so, so very important. I decided to become a volunteer with Compassion and Choices because of the people who helped me give my husband the choice that he deserved. I also decided to become a volunteer with Compassion Choices is because of their commitment to help us all learn about those choices so that when we come to that point, and as I saw with my husband, we make the choice that's right for us, we can be at peace. My husband showed me in his last gift of love that ultimately we are our choices. The more honest and heartfelt they are, the happier we all can be. Thank you very much.
We're just about at the end of our program. Before I introduce myself, I'd like to introduce somebody else who has already blown me away today, and that is Min Zidell, who is sitting, I think, at this table right here. I'd like to ask her to stand. She has decided to make a $50,000 gift to this organization. So, Min, would you please stand? I'm not going to ask her to stand, but you all know who she is, and please thank her personally after this event. I'm Frank Moss, and you may have guessed, I'm a retired Episcopal priest. I served for 40 years in 7 different congregations in 7 different states, as Betsy likes to say, always just ahead of the law. And when I was first starting out, I got to know quite well a young psychiatrist who commented to me once about my particular vocation. He said, "Clergy are the only people I know who are regularly asked by people, even people they don't know, to join with them at the critical moments of their life." And I can certainly attest to that because over the years I've sat with people in all kinds of critical moments, some very happy, some grindingly sad. I've been there when babies have been born. I've been there for baptisms, for weddings, for divorces, and even for death. And I've sat with, I cannot tell you how many different people who were at the end of their lives. And I loved all of those moments of contact with people. But the one that I still treasure the most was being able to sit with people as they died, to be in their hospital room or their bedroom or wherever they were, and being there as their lives came to an end. Sometimes it was a magnificent event as they quietly and gently left this world. Sometimes it was extremely tough for me, and particularly for their families and friends, as they went kicking and screaming from this world, being dragged into the next. And I came away with one conviction about that whole experience, and that is that there is something radically wrong about the way in which we do death in this country. There is something radically wrong about having people linger and suffer and go on when it doesn't make any sense anymore. And I have to say that knowing about death with dignity was one of the reasons why Betsy and I packed up all of our stuff and left Massachusetts and moved out here to become residents of Oregon. The fact that our only grandchildren live here may have influenced us also. But we wanted our lives to end in a place where we could have choice. And so we came here because of our kids and our grandkids, but also because of death with dignity. It wasn't until after we got here that we knew that there was even such a thing as compassion and choices. But what we've come to learn is that those two things have to go hand in hand, because death with dignity is a law, but compassion and choices is the group that makes it happen, that gives access to all the people in Oregon to something which I believe is a right that every single one of us should have. And so it didn't take very long for Betsy and me in our early retirement, swearing we weren't going to do anything, to suddenly be up to our ears in compassion and choices, because we believe so strongly in the mission, we believe so strongly in the people who work here, and we believe so strongly that this is the right thing for us, and we hope for all of you who are here. My task is to invite you to join us in our commitment to compassion and choices, to invite you to become involved in whatever level feels comfortable to you in the life of this wonderful organization as we work to create access for all Oregonians to something which is critically important. I'd like to ask the table captains to hand out the donation materials that you'll find in the paper bags that are in the center of the table. And as you're doing that, I'd like to let you know about a couple of really exciting things that are also part of our day and which I think will transform the things that all of us are able to do. One of those is that we have an anonymous donor who has agreed to match 2-for-1 every gift that the sponsors who've already made their pledges have given to the organization. And what's even better than that is that they've gone a step further, and they're going to match 2-for-1 every gift that's given today. So I have no idea who it is, but thank you very much. So what that means, math was not my strong subject, but what that means is that for every dollar you give, this donor is going to give $2 additional. So think about how your gift can multiply in support of this wonderful organization. When Betsy and I first moved to Oregon, we lived for 3.5 years in Pendleton, where I served as the interim in the Episcopal Church there. And we came to love that very austere, remarkably dry part of Oregon. And the other thing that we discovered while we were there is that many of the things that we enjoy here in the Valley are not available to people in Pendleton. And all of Eastern Oregon and all of the rural parts of Oregon. You may have noticed, as Kat was talking about that map, all the wonderful things that we've done to increase access in Oregon. It was pretty much the cities up and down the valley. And my goal is to make our work so vital that it touches every single Oregonian, not just in the valley, but in Eastern Oregon, in the thinly populated part of the state. And so I hope that you will all join me in giving as generously as you can. In your program, you will see a listing of people who have already made their commitments at various different levels. And as you're thinking about what you'd like to do, I'd like to recognize some of those people by inviting them to stand up, because that's what we're doing today. We're standing up for access. And I hope that all of you, in whatever way you can join us in doing that. So I'd like to ask Dr. Nancy Crumpacker to stand up as a collaborator giving $5,000. Is there anybody else who would like to stand up at that level? If so, I would invite you to do so. I know that's a lot. Now, how about the implementers, those who have given $2,500? Could we have all of them stand up? $2,500. Are there others who would be willing to stand up at that level? Whatever level you give, I hope you can remember that what you're doing is supporting people that you have never met and probably will never get to know, who need to have access to this law and to the services of Compassionate Choices. We heard that wonderful story that was just told about the wonderful Ben and what he went through and how it was facilitated by Compassionate Choices. Imagine if we weren't able to provide that. Imagine if there was no one to call. All right, how about those who give between $1,000 and $2,500? Would you please stand? Are there others who would stand at that level? Thank you. We're at facilitators at $500. Could we see those who are giving $500? Others who might want to stand at that level. How about $250? We don't have a name for that group except to say thank you. $250. Thank you. Others who might want to stand at that level. $100. Thank you. I'd like to ask the table captains to collect the gifts and pledges that were made and put them back in the envelope, and the staff will come and pick them up. And the only thing I have left to say is thank you all very much for coming. Thank you very much for your generosity, and thank you for your support and commitment to Compassionate Choices. Have a good rest of the day.